Yeah.
So let's talk about Steve Urkel. Family Matters. Let's talk about Jaleel White. Yeah, let's start. You ready? Being a part of the team. Hey, hey, I didn't ask you to play, Mother Flower.
I mean, just
I,
let's do it.
you ready? All right, good. Let's do
Hmm.
it. All right, let me flip it over here so I can hear it better. Being a part of the TGIF brand sometimes makes you feel like you don't completely belong in the pantheon of blackness. Blackness is. All right, I'm sorry, but the pantheon of blackness is funny.
I can see that, especially coming from him. But
Yo, the pantheon of blackness is a wild way to say it. Oh my God. All right, I'm sorry. I know I'm not supposed to pause it while we're doing this, but
no,
that was too crazy to talk.
it is kind of wild to say that,
I never fit
especially when
into
we're
the
talking about
pantheon of black. I'm gonna start saying that.
TV. Like, sir,
Crazy. Of
that's,
blackness. Blackness has been treated as a very monolithic experience in entertainment. If it's not a hood story, it's not a black story. And sometimes I feel left out of that. So it's like like if there's ever a poll and they say, oh, what are your favorite black shows? And Martin is in there, or Living Single, or any of those guys, I already know we coming in last. But if there's ever a poll and it's just like your favorite family shows, and suddenly Martin's not in there, or whatever, all of a sudden we rank really high. And so it's kind of interesting
duh.
in how we look at ourselves, to be quite honest, even as black folks. And somehow I became a symbol for um, black male nerd culture, to be quite honest. I mean, I know this for a fact. Any brother that grew up. All right, I got to pause it again. Why does he not know that this is a family show?
Right, because the reason.
And
Okay,
what does he think he's supposed to be part of? I somehow became a symbol for black male nerdness. Nigga, you was Urkel. What do you think you were gonna be a symbol for?
you were
50
also,
Cent?
but he
You
was
thought you was
also,
gonna be a symbol for gangster rappers?
but he was
I
also a
mean,
symbol of nerds being cool, of nerds being okay, because when the whole Stefan Urkel persona gets introduced, people start looking at nerds differently. People start looking at nerds as, oh, there's a glow up that can happen here. So I don't even understand his logic there, because I feel like they wrote the nerd out of the show in that way, where you now had these two characters that you could look at, and you see the evolution, if you will, of the nerd. And honestly, that is probably a lot of nerds that have had a similar experience. Not them stepping inside of a chamber and getting out and turning into another person, but maybe feeling uncomfortable or weird for being the smart one or the weird one or the one who loves books or science or whatever. Those people grew up, and a lot of them are very successful. And
and became assholes just like the Stefan Urkel character.
well, there's that. But also, some of those people also became the flyest person in the room. So,
And some of us learned to just accept ourselves.
but and that's where I was going too. Like, he something that he's pointing towards is that I think he's ignoring is the fact that everybody grew up, including us who grew up on the show, like who grew up watching the show, I should say. We all grew up. So the reason your show is considered a family show is because we then got older and were able to watch things like Martin and Living Single, and because we evolved too.
But the people weren't. All right, let's finish this and then we
I
could.
know. Yeah, sorry, I got carried away.
That's fine. Oh,
Because he gets.
I became a symbol for um, black male nerd culture. To be quite honest, I mean, I know this for a fact. Any brother that grew up in the 80s and 90s, or 90s and 2000s, wearing glasses, he was told at school he looked like me. He was called Urkel. And he didn't look anything like me.
Oh God, who cares?
guaranteed. But still, his peers would find a way to call him Urkel, and even girls to that extent. So it's really humbling to see how far nerd culture has come. And really, it's not nerd culture; it's smart culture. It's hobbyist culture. It's skateboarders. It's and I could never have known in a million years that I would be the face of that. I never could have known it.
All right, that's enough of Urkel.
He's so corny to me.
All right. Um.
He's just a, he's just, he's just a corny nigga. Anyway,
Okay, back to the original part, which is what seemingly has gone viral or is trending, however you want to say it today. Um, Jaleel White believes that if it's not a hood story, it's not a black story.
who said that?
Well, that he did.
No, I just
And
mean who. I mean, who told him that?
well, he's trying to justify it by saying that this show is not regarded like the other shows because it's not a hood story. But that's not true. And I can see why he says Martin is a hood story. But Living
Sure.
Single was a hood story? Wasn't
No.
she corporate? Weren't half the characters in the show corporate and wearing suits half the show?
They lived in a brownstone in Fort Greene, I think.
I,
Like, I don't. Okay, fine. They were young. I think it's implied that they didn't have a lot of money. Um, because it was four of them living in that apartment.
uh-huh.
So I think, but that's not when you live in New York. Like, it's very common to meet young people in their 20s who have three and four roommates.
Well, let me tell you.
Ex-
I know this is not the pod to speak about economics, but I just saw what New York rents are supposed to be going up to. They're saying 5,300
for a studio.
for a one bedroom.
Oh, because studios. Listen, I don't even live in New York, and studios around my way are going for $3,000 a pop.
Yo, but
Studios.
5,300 is
Yeah,
about to be 22 people in a two bedroom.
I'm never moving back to New York.
I gotta
How
find out
can
how
I?
to move further. Anyway,
Right. That's. Listen, every time I think about moving, I'm like, so not New York or New Jersey, right?
right. I think the thing is that going back to Family Matters being viewed as a family show and
Uh-huh.
not a quote unquote black show.
Uh-huh.
One, one, I think he's wrong. I think black people talk about and watch and adore Family Matters. But when the word family is the first word in your show,
Right.
it indicates that it is a family show. By default, if you Google family show, I would put some money down that Family Matters is probably high on the list of things that are going to pop up because it has the word family in the beginning of the show. It's not called Good Times. It's not called The Jamie Foxx Show. It's called Family Matters.
And it
Extreme
also.
examples that I'm giving on purpose, but the point is, the star of the show is a child. When the show starts, we meet Urkel, who's a kid. And so the adults who were watching Living Single, which came out not too far after, those adults were probably watching Family Matters with their kids or
That's
with their
true.
younger siblings. And so for those people who are that age, like, how many kids do we think were watching Martin when it was airing live on television? It wasn't a show for children. Now,
No, we
hold
were
on.
watching it, but
Well, that's what I'm about to say. Now were kids watching it? Sure. But was
it
it
wasn't a
a
family show.
children?
No,
Were children the demographic for that
no,
show? No.
no, they
But
weren't.
children were, and young people were the demographic for Family Matters. It was rated PG. Like,
But okay, let's add to that too. because you have to. I'm sorry, guys. I haven't eaten in like a really long time. Um, so something that we need to add to that is he called it out too in that interview. It was in the TGIF prime time time block.
Yeah.
All of those shows were family shows. Step by Step, Boy Meets World, they were
Yeah.
all family shows. This was a whole campaign by ABC to get families to watch TV together.
Right.
You look back at the history of TGIF, the reason those shows it's kind of like for people today who watch TV today and maybe weren't watching TV because they were young or whatever around that time, for whatever reason, you can liken it to what they did with Thursdays, with Scandal and Grey's Anatomy, and no, it wasn't TGIF, but it was still a certain type of show. Station
Right.
19, all those shows that they had in that Thursday time slot, now they have different shows because some of those shows, I think Grey's Anatomy is still on, but a lot of those shows have gone.
Grey's Anatomy will never end.
It will never end.
Grey's Anatomy is on like season 700. You know what I'm saying?
And once once a year, I catch up. I didn't do it this year, but once a year I'll go back to whatever.
You still got a couple weeks.
Couple seasons I missed, and I'll watch it because I can't watch it consistently.
Still got a few weeks.
Yeah, I like to let like 2 seasons pile up before I watch it. So we have to remember that this was marketed to families. This
Yeah.
everything, like they were adjacent to Step by Step. Like this was a conscious effort to. Full House was in that time block. It was a conscious
But
effort.
even the context of the show, right? When you watch, I watched Family Matters probably twice in its entirety. When you watch Family Matters, they're speaking about things that are for families. Like,
yeah,
they're not going clubbing in the show and trying to say, yo, we gotta fuck bitches tonight.
No, and
it's like, you know, Eddie is failing school. Eddie is hanging out with a drug dealer. You know, it's like, it's a family show.
It was, and don't quote me on this, but in my mind, it was ABC's answer to The Cosby Show. Because it's essentially, conceptually, it's similar. It's
I see
not
what you're
the
saying.
same. It's not the same.
I see why you say it.
But because Cosby Show was an NBC show. So I'm sure that there was.
I got what you're saying. The format or the template was similar. Yeah.
Right.
I understand what you're saying. Very different, but I understand.
Yeah, but
the structure.
I think the bare bones of it was the same in terms of like it being a family show where, you know, you start off and there's like, fun and laughs and giggles and whatever. And then in the middle, somebody gets into some sort of trouble. And then the end is like the family coming together or the parents like helping them figure it out or whatever.
Right.
There's a format to the family.
And that's actually a great comparison. And here's why. The Cosby Show is known as a black show, but it's known as a black family show. It would never be in the same conversation as Martin and Living Single. And so I think that actually tells us a little bit about Jaleel White. And that's where I'm going to leave it.
He seems like a clown. It seems to me that everything that people say about him might actually be true. Apparently his former castmates, don't really bang with him either. It just feels like every time he comes out and says something publicly, there's some weirdness there. And he thinks that everybody else is the problem and he's not the problem.